The explosion ripped through the eastern wing of Axiom 7 Station at exactly 1900. Commander Elena Cross hit the deck as debris screamed past her head, her dress uniform suddenly feeling like a death sentence. Around her, delegates from a dozen worlds scrambled for cover, their carefully rehearsed diplomatic composure shattered in an instant. Elena's training kicked in before conscious thought could catch up. She rolled behind an overturned table, eyes scanning the chaos for threats. The peace summit had been going so well. Too well, perhaps. Someone always benefits when peace fails. Through the smoke, she spotted movement. A figure in Kryvian robes stumbled from the blast zone, green blood spreading across ornate fabric. Ambassador Tyrell. Elena had shared drinks with him just hours earlier, listening to his hopes for ending the border conflicts that had plagued his people for generations. She sprinted across the open floor. Energy bolts sizzled past her shoulders. Someone was still shooting. Elena didn't care. She reached Tyrell as his legs buckled, catching him before he hit the ground. "Commander," he rasped, his three-fingered hand gripping her arm with surprising strength. His golden eyes were fading, but they locked onto hers with desperate intensity. "Blood debt. I pledge it." Elena knew enough about Kryvian culture to understand what that meant. It was sacred, binding across generations. "Save your strength," she urged, dragging him toward cover. No time. His other hand pressed something small and cold into her palm. A data chip. "My brother, Corvin. The coordinates. If ever you need, the debt is owed." His breathing turned ragged. "They wanted war. I wanted peace. Promise me. Promise the debt will matter." "I promise," Elena whispered. Tyrell's eyes closed. His hand went limp in hers. Elena clutched the data chip, feeling its weight like an anchor. Dark. Security forces flooded the room seconds later, too late to save anyone who mattered. The investigation concluded it was an extremist faction opposed to peace. No one was ever caught. Elena's superiors filed reports and moved on. She kept the data chip and said nothing about the coordinates burned into its memory. 5 years changed everything. Elena wore an admiral's stars now, commanded fleets instead of diplomatic escorts, and carried responsibilities that would have crushed her younger self. Earth's colonial expansion had continued peacefully, carefully, building bridges instead of walls. They had learned from history's mistakes. They had allies, trade agreements, cultural exchanges. Humanity had earned its place among the stars through patience and perseverance. Then the Dominion coalition struck without warning. 7 human colonies went dark in a single night. 16 million people. The attacks were coordinated, surgical, devastating. Ships appeared from hyperspace, unleashed hell, and vanished before any defense could mount. Elena stood in Earth's military command center, watching the casualty reports climb, and felt something cold settle into her bones. "We are receiving responses from our allies," General Hayes reported, his face grim on the display. "They're all the same, Admiral. They're staying neutral." Neutral. Elena's voice could have cut steel. "We have mutual defense treaties with half the sector. The coalition is claiming we developed prohibited weapons. They're saying this is a justified preemptive action." Hayes looked like he wanted to put his fist through the screen. "It's complete fabrication, but our allies are choosing to believe it." Elena's jaw clenched. And the Kryvian Empire? Silent. They're not condemning the attacks, but they're not joining them either. Intel suggests internal political pressure. The Kryvian Empire. Elena's hand unconsciously moved to her jacket pocket, where she still carried Tyrell's data chip after all these years. A blood debt, he had called it. Sacred and binding. But politics, it seemed, could silence even sacred oaths. Over the next 48 hours, Elena watched Earth's diplomatic position collapse like a house of cards. Species they had traded with for decades suddenly found reasons to distance themselves. The Dominion coalition grew bolder, their rhetoric more aggressive. They spoke of human treachery, human ambition, human danger. They were preparing for something bigger than raids. They were preparing for extermination. Elena called an emergency meeting of her senior staff. Captain Devin Grant, her tactical officer, laid out the grim reality. "We can hold Earth and the inner colonies, maybe, but we're outnumbered 15-1. If they commit to a full assault, we'll be fighting a defensive war we cannot win. Then we change the game," Elena said quietly. All eyes turned to her. She pulled out the data chip, holding it up to the light. 5 years ago, I was given coordinates and a promise. It's time to collect. Her intelligence officer, Lieutenant Amara Johnson, frowned. Admiral, the Kryvian government has made their position clear. They won't intervene. I'm not going to the government. Elena inserted the chip into the console. The coordinates materialized, pointing to a location deep in Kryvian space. Not their capital, not any official installation. I'm going to a family, and I'm calling in a debt that transcends politics. The jump to Kryvian space took 3 days. Elena traveled alone on a small diplomatic shuttle, unarmed and unescorted. It was a calculated risk. If she was wrong about the debt, she was delivering herself into enemy territory. If she was right, she might find the key to everything. The coordinates led to Thyrell's ancestral estate, a sprawling compound on the Kryvian homeworld's northern continent. Elena's shuttle was intercepted immediately by local defense forces, but when she transmitted the authentication codes from Thyrell's chip, everything changed. The hostile lockdown became an honor guard. They escorted her down like she was visiting royalty. A Kryvian warrior met her on the landing platform. He was larger than Tyrell had been, his scales darker, his bearing military, but his eyes held the same golden intensity. Commander Cross, he said, using her old rank. I am Corvin, war leader of the Kryvian fleets. My brother spoke of you in his final message. Admiral now, Elena corrected gently. And I'm sorry for your loss. Tyrell was a good man working for a better galaxy. Carvin's expression tightened. A galaxy that killed him for it. Come, we should speak privately. He led her through halls decorated with the military honors of a dozen generations. Kryvian culture valued strength, but also honor and memory. Every warrior who died defending their people was remembered. Every debt was recorded, every promise kept. They entered a secure chamber. Corvin activated privacy fields that would stop any surveillance, then turned to face her. You've come to collect the blood debt. I have. Elena met his gaze without flinching. Earth is under attack. Our allies have abandoned us. Your empire remains silent. I need to know why. Corvin's scales rippled with what Elena recognized as shame. Because I am being blackmailed, Admiral, and because I am a coward. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Corvin moved to a secure console and pulled up files. Images appeared. Classified Kryvian military deployments, secret council meetings, and then something darker. Evidence of Corvin himself in compromising situations, meetings with known criminals, transactions that appeared to show massive corruption. All fabricated, Corvin said bitterly, but convincing enough to destroy my career and dishonor my family if released. The Dominion Coalition approached me 6 months ago. They said if I kept the Kryvian fleets neutral during their action against humanity, the evidence would disappear. If I intervened, they would broadcast it across the Empire. Elena studied the images carefully. This is sophisticated work. It would take resources, access, time. More than the Coalition should have. Corvin's voice dropped. Admiral, 3 days ago I received additional intelligence. The same group that is blackmailing me was responsible for my brother's assassination 5 years ago. Elena's blood turned to ice. They killed Tyrell to stop the peace summit. And now they're using you to finish what they started. I have been trapped between honor and duty, Corvin said. My brother pledged you a blood debt. I am bound to honor it. But if I do, I destroy my family name and possibly trigger a civil war within the Empire when my rivals use the false evidence against me. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities. Then she smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. War Leader Corvin, I'm going to make you an offer. I will eliminate the blackmail evidence and expose whoever is behind this conspiracy. In exchange, when I succeed, you will bring the Kryvian fleets to Earth's aid and honor your brother's debt. Corvin stared at her. The evidence is held on Fortress Station Meridian, deep in Coalition territory. It is one of their most heavily defended installations. You would be going in alone against impossible odds. I won't be alone, Elena said. I'll have a small team, and I'll have something the Coalition doesn't expect. A human who remembers her friends and never forgets her enemies. This is suicide, Corvin said bluntly. This is war, Elena corrected. And in war, audacity is sometimes the only weapon that matters. Corvin studied her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. If you can do this impossible thing, the Kryvian Armada will answer your call. You have my oath on my brother's memory. Then we have a deal. Elena extended her hand. Corvin clasped it in the Kryvian manner, sealing the agreement. Now tell me everything you know about Fortress Meridian. Elena returned to Earth with a plan that her staff immediately declared insane. Captain Grant was the most vocal opponent. Admiral Meridian isn't just defended, it's impregnable. 3 battle groups in permanent rotation, orbital defense platforms, internal security that would make a prison look friendly, and that's assuming we can even get close without being detected. We won't get close, Elena said calmly. We'll go straight through the front door. Lieutenant Johnson raised an eyebrow. Explain. Elena pulled up schematics Corvin had provided. Meridian hosts regular diplomatic exchanges. Coalition members come and go freely. We're going to pose as a delegation from the Viridian Concordat. They're nominally neutral, and they've been courting coalition favor. Perfect cover. The Viridians will report the deception, Grant objected. Not if they never know about it. We'll intercept their actual delegation en route, delay them with a convenient mechanical failure, and take their place. By the time they arrive late and confused, we'll be inside Meridian. It was audacious. It was dangerous. It required split-second timing and perfect execution. In other words, it was exactly the kind of operation that had a chance of working precisely because no one would expect anyone to try it. Elena assembled a team of 8. Each was a volunteer. Each understood the odds. Grant insisted on coming despite Elena's objections. Johnson signed on for intelligence work. The rest were special forces operators who had worked together for years. People who trusted each other with their lives because they had done exactly that dozens of times before. They intercepted the Viridian delegation exactly as planned. No violence, just a friendly suggestion that their ship's navigation system needed immediate maintenance, and wasn't it fortunate that a human repair facility was so close. The Viridians, who prided themselves on their technical precision, couldn't possibly proceed with questionable systems. Elena's team took the Viridian credentials, their diplomatic shuttle, and their appointment slot. 40 hours later, they docked at Fortress Meridian. The security checkpoint was thorough but routine. Coalition forces were confident in their strength, and legitimate diplomatic traffic was common enough not to raise suspicions. Elena played the role of a minor Viridian official perfectly, bored and slightly annoyed by the process. Her team followed her lead. They were cleared and escorted to guest quarters. As soon as they were alone, Johnson began deploying surveillance countermeasures while Grant mapped their route to the data vault Corvin had identified. 2 levels down, heavy security, biometric locks, Grant summarized. This is where it gets interesting. Interesting is one word for it, Elena murmured. She checked her concealed weapons. Nothing heavy, nothing that would trigger scanners, but enough to handle unexpected complications. We move in 3 hours, during the station's 3rd shift rotation. Johnson, I need those security feeds looped. Already working on it, Admiral. The 3 hours crawled by. Elena spent them reviewing the mission parameters, checking and rechecking every detail. There would be no backup. No reinforcements, no second chances. Either they got the evidence and got out, or they died here and Earth fell. She thought about Tyrell, bleeding out in her arms 5 years ago. Promise me the debt will matter, he had said. She intended to keep that promise. At precisely 0300 hours they moved. Johnson's loops held. The corridors were empty. They reached the first security checkpoint and Grant deployed a device that spoofed the biometric scanner with copied credentials. The door slid open. Too easy, Elena thought, but they were committed now. 2 levels down, past automated defenses that Johnson disabled with practiced efficiency, they reached the vault. It was a massive door, triple-locked, designed to withstand anything short of an antimatter charge. Grant studied it, then looked at Elena. This is going to take time. Then we buy you time, Elena said. She positioned her team in defensive positions. Do it. Grant went to work. Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Elena watched the corridor, every sense alert. Something felt wrong. The security was tough but not impossible. For a facility supposedly holding galaxy-shaking blackmail material, it was almost... "Admiral," Johnson said urgently, her hand pressed to her earpiece. "I'm detecting unusual network activity. Someone's watching us." The trap sprung before Elena could react. Blast doors slammed down, sealing the corridor. Emergency lights flooded the area, and from concealed positions 24 Coalition soldiers emerged, weapons trained on Elena's team. A figure stepped forward, and Elena's blood turned cold. She recognized him from Corvin's files. Chancellor Vex of the Coalition Security Directorate, Tyrell's murderer. "Admiral Cross," Vex said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "How predictable. We knew the Kryvian blood debt would draw you out eventually. Thank you for making this so convenient." Elena kept her hands visible, her voice steady. "Convenient for who? You just revealed your entire conspiracy. To whom? Your team will die here. The evidence of Kryvian corruption will be released on schedule. And Earth will burn without allies." Vex gestured to his soldiers. "Take them. Keep the Admiral alive for now. I want her to watch Earth fall before she dies." They were disarmed and dragged to holding cells deep in Meridian's lower levels. Tss. Elena's team was separated, leaving her alone in a small, featureless room. She tested the door once, already knowing it was futile, then sat down to think. Vex had planned this carefully. He had used Tyrell's death to create the blood debt, knowing it would eventually force a confrontation. He had positioned the blackmail to control Corvin. He had orchestrated the attacks on Earth to isolate humanity. Every move had been calculated to lead to this moment. But he had made one mistake. He assumed Elena had come only to steal the evidence. He didn't realize she had come to broadcast it. Elena closed her eyes and activated the subdermal communicator Johnson had installed before they left Earth. It was designed to penetrate almost any shielding operating on quantum frequencies that were nearly impossible to detect or jam. Her team all had them, just in case. "Grant," she whispered. "Johnson!" Anyone reading? Static. Then Grant's voice, barely audible. "Reading you, Admiral. The others are unconscious. What's the play?" "Johnson, can you access Meridian's communication array from there?" A pause. "Negative. I need to physically reach the main communications hub. Then we don't broadcast from here." Elena's mind raced. "We broadcast from everywhere. Can you trigger a cascade failure in Meridian's security protocols? That would lock down the entire station, including our cells. But it would also activate every emergency broadcast system simultaneously. They're designed to reach every Coalition vessel, every member world, everything. Fail-safe protocol in case the command structure is compromised." Johnson's tone shifted from despair to understanding. "And if we feed the evidence into that broadcast, the entire galaxy hears it at once. Every bit of Vex's conspiracy, every piece of fabricated evidence against Corvin, every detail of Tyrell's assassination, all of it, transmitted on channels they can't shut down without manually destroying every transmitter on the station. I can do it," Johnson said. "But I'll need maybe 90 seconds of distraction, something to pull security attention away from the communications hub." "I'll give you 3 minutes," Elena said. "On my signal. Be ready." She stood and moved to the cell door. "Guard," she called out. "I need to speak with Chancellor Vex. Tell him I have information about additional human operations he needs to know about." It took 20 minutes, but eventually the door opened. Vex himself came, flanked by 4 armed soldiers. "Trying to bargain for your life, Admiral?" he asked. "Trying to save it." Elena lied smoothly. "I know things about Earth's defense networks. Codes, positions, weaknesses. I'll trade that information for my team's lives." Vex studied her with cold calculation. "You would betray your own species? I would save 8 people instead of watching billions die. We've already lost. You made sure of that. At least let me save someone." It was what Vex wanted to hear. He gestured for her to be brought out of the cell, confident in his victory. They took her to an interrogation room, and she began feeding him carefully crafted lies mixed with enough truth to seem believable. 3 minutes. That was what she needed to give Johnson. She stretched the interrogation, asking questions, demanding guarantees, playing the desperate commander trying to save her people. Vex grew impatient, then angry, then threatening. Elena didn't care. She watched the chronometer on the wall. 2 minutes. Vex slammed his hand on the table. Enough games. Give me the access codes now or I start executing your team one by one. I want them here. I want to see them alive before I give you anything. You're in no position to make demands. Then you get nothing, Elena said flatly. 3 minutes! Alarms shrieked throughout Meridian. Emergency lighting activated. Vex spun toward his soldiers. What's happening? Security cascade failure, one of them reported, pressing his earpiece. Multiple systems going down across the station. Source unknown. Vex's eyes widened. The communications array? The main display in the interrogation room flickered to life, showing not station security feeds but files, documents, recordings, audio of Vex ordering Thyrell's assassination, video of meetings where the fabricated evidence against Corvin was created, financial records showing coalition funds being used to blackmail Kryvian leadership. Every piece of the conspiracy laid bare for all to see, and it wasn't just showing on this screen. Elena could see the horror in Vex's expression as he realized the truth. This was broadcasting on every coalition frequency, every emergency channel, every diplomatic network. Hundreds of worlds were seeing this simultaneously. Impossible, Vex breathed. You underestimated humans, Elena said quietly. We remember our debts, and we never forget those who try to destroy us. Vex drew a weapon and pointed it at Elena's head. It doesn't matter. You'll still die here. Earth will still fall. Maybe, Elena acknowledged, but the galaxy will know the truth. And Chancellor, you'll have started a war you can't possibly win. The weapon trembled in Vex's hand. He was watching his entire conspiracy crumble in real time. Every coalition member world would be demanding answers. The fabricated evidence against Corvin was exposed as fraud. Thyrell's assassination was revealed as an act of political murder, not extremist violence. And the Kryvian blood debt was now known to the entire galaxy. The decision was taken from his hands. The interrogation room door exploded inward. Kryvian warriors poured through, weapons ready, moving with lethal precision. They neutralized Vex's guards in seconds. Their leader stepped forward, and Elena recognized Corvin. War leader, she said, unable to hide her surprise. You're early. The moment your broadcast began, I mobilized the fleet, Corvin replied, his golden eyes fixed on Vex with predatory intensity. The evidence is destroyed, the conspiracy exposed, and my brother's murder avenged. The blood debt is not yet settled, Admiral, but it will be. Where is the rest of your team? Cells, lower level. Johnson triggered the cascade. She's somewhere near the communications hub. Grant was 2 levels down. We'll find him. Corvin gave orders in rapid Kryvian. His warriors dispersed. He turned back to Vex, who stood frozen, his weapon now useless. Chancellor Vex of the Dominion Coalition, you murdered a peacemaker and tried to ignite a war through deception. Under Kryvian law, you have forfeited your right to mercy. The Kryvian Empire has no jurisdiction here, Vex said, trying to muster defiance. But I do, Elena said softly. She met Corvin's gaze. War leader, I claim him under human authority. He orchestrated attacks on Earth's colonies. He's responsible for 16 million deaths. He'll face trial for his crimes. Corvin's scales rippled with what might have been approval. As you wish, Admiral, though death would be kinder than what awaits him in human courts. Within hours, Elena's entire team was recovered. Johnson had minor injuries from forcing her way to the communications hub. Grant had fought his way out of his cell when the security systems failed. The rest were bruised but alive. Meridian itself was in chaos. The broadcast had reached every corner of Coalition space. Member worlds were in uproar, demanding explanations. Several were already withdrawing from the Alliance, unwilling to be associated with such naked aggression and deception. And beyond Coalition territory, the Kryvian Armada had arrived at Earth. It was the largest fleet Elena had ever seen. Hundreds of warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering, arranged in perfect formation around Earth and its remaining colonies. The Dominion Coalition forces that had been preparing their final assault suddenly found themselves outnumbered and outgunned. Elena stood on the bridge of Corvin's flagship, watching the tactical displays. The coalition fleet was withdrawing, scrambling to reorganize in the face of overwhelming opposition. "They'll regroup," Corvin said. "Try to salvage something from this disaster. But the war is over, Admiral. Earth is safe. Thanks to you," Elena said, "and to Tyrell. His death meant something after all. His death should never have been necessary." Corvin's voice was heavy with old grief. "But his sacrifice and your determination to honor it may have saved more lives than we can count. The blood debt is paid, Admiral Cross. From this day forward, Earth and the Kryvian Empire are bound by more than debt. We are bound by shared purpose. Over the following weeks, the political aftermath reshaped the galaxy. The Dominion Coalition fractured as member worlds abandoned the Alliance. Vex and 17 other conspirators faced trial not on Earth, but before a galactic tribunal. Elena insisted on it. She wanted the galaxy to see that humanity sought justice, not revenge. The trials were broadcast across every civilized world. Evidence was presented methodically, carefully, thoroughly. The accused were given every opportunity to defend themselves. And one by one they were convicted not by human vindictiveness, but by the weight of their own crimes. Vex was sentenced to life imprisonment on a neutral world, his power stripped away, his name recorded in history as a cautionary tale about the cost of unchecked ambition. Elena attended the sentencing. When the verdict was read, she felt no triumph, only a quiet satisfaction that justice had been served. Earth's former allies, the ones who had abandoned humanity in its darkest hour, came crawling back with apologies and offers of renewed friendship. Elena met with each delegation personally. She was polite, professional, and absolutely clear about the new terms of engagement. "Trust is earned," she told them, "and it's far easier to lose than to regain. Earth will work with you, trade with you, even fight alongside you when our interests align. But we will never again assume that treaties and kind words mean anything without the will to back them up." Some were offended. Most understood. A few, perhaps, even respected the brutal honesty. The Kryvian Empire became Earth's closest ally, but it was Corvin himself who insisted on a particular condition in their formal alliance treaty. It was a small clause, easily overlooked by most diplomats, but Elena recognized its significance immediately. It stipulated that every 5 years on the anniversary of Tyrell's death, representatives from Earth and the Kryvian Empire would meet to honor his memory and reaffirm their commitment to peace. "So we never forget why we fight," Corvin explained when they signed the treaty. "And so my brother's dream of a better galaxy continues to guide us." Elena accepted gladly. She had her own memorial to maintain, her own way of remembering. The data chip Tyrell had given her was now preserved in Earth's military museum, a small artifact representing the moment when a dying alien's trust in a human commander changed the course of history. She visited it sometimes late at night when the museum was closed. She would stand before the display and remember Tyrell's words. "Promise me the debt will matter." She had kept that promise in ways neither of them could have imagined. The galaxy learned many lessons from those tumultuous months. They learned that humanity could be generous in friendship and terrible in vengeance. They learned that trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to rebuild. They learned that humans remembered everything, every kindness and every betrayal, and acted accordingly. But most importantly, they learned about Elena Cross herself, the human admiral who had risked everything on a 5-year-old promise, who had walked into certain death to honor a debt she could have ignored, who had toppled an interstellar conspiracy not through superior firepower, but through determination and moral clarity. The other species began calling her the queen who never forgets. It was meant as a compliment and a warning. Elena accepted both interpretations. She had never sought power or reputation, but she understood their value as tools for protecting what mattered. But years passed. Elena eventually retired from active military service, but her influence only grew. She became Earth's ambassador at large, traveling to distant worlds, building relationships, settling disputes. Wherever she went, people remembered the story of how she had honored a blood debt and shaken the foundations of galactic politics. Young officers studied her tactics. Diplomats analyzed her negotiations. Historians debated the full impact of her decisions. But Elena herself remained focused on the simple principle that had guided her from the beginning. Keep your promises, especially to those who can no longer hold you accountable. On the 5th anniversary of Tyrell's death, Elena and Corvin met on Axiom 7, the same station where it had all begun. The hall that had been destroyed in the assassination attempt had been rebuilt, transformed into a memorial garden. Flowers from a dozen worlds bloomed there, each one chosen to represent species that had found peace instead of war. They stood together in silence, two old warriors who had learned that the hardest battles were often fought with words and trust rather than weapons and shields. "Do you think he would be proud?" Corvin asked quietly. "My brother. Of what we built from his sacrifice." Elena considered the question carefully. She looked around the garden, thought about the treaties signed and wars averted, about the young people from 100 worlds who now grew up in a galaxy slightly less brutal than before. "I think he would be satisfied," she said finally. "Not proud, because pride suggests the work is finished. Satisfied that we're still trying." Corvin nodded slowly. "Still trying. Yes, that is all any of us can do." They placed memorial stones at the garden's center, a human tradition and a Kryvian one blended together. As they turned to leave, Elena paused and looked back at the place where Tyrell had died in her arms. "I kept my promise," she said softly. "The debt mattered. It mattered more than either of us could have known." The galaxy had indeed learned that the human queen never forgot a favor. But more than that, they learned she never forgot the price others paid for peace. And her retribution for those who threatened that peace didn't just shake worlds. It rebuilt them.